Global Matthes, realizing just transitions. Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP30 in Billy.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming, and as an ocean lover myself, it's my big honor to welcome you to this COP30 side event here in the German Climate Pavilion. And of course our topic is now how to scale up marine nature conservation and climate solutions, as we all know that the oceans contribute significantly to the storage of carbon dioxide. And of course this requires an intact natural environment in the oceans so that the seagrass meadows, the algae and the mangroves can actually absorb carbon dioxide as they grow. On the other side, of course, the oceans are increasingly used to generate renewable energy, particularly through offshore wind power, and this must be, of course, also done in an environmentally friendly way. And with that, I warmly welcome you once again here in the German Climate Pavilion. And for the official welcome words to our side event, I welcome now the Secretary General from the German Federal Environmental Foundation, also known as the Deutsche Bundesstiftung Umwelt, Alexander Bonde.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our side event. Sorry for the small delay. We were waiting for the minister and he just arrived at the pavilion, and then something urgent happened and he went away. So this is COP, how it is, and thank you very much that you are here and that you are not leaving. So 71% of the Earth's surface is covered by oceans. But despite the rapid and dangerous progression of the climate crisis and biodiversity loss, they remain critically undervalued and insufficiently protected. The ocean is not only the largest carbon sink on Earth, but also a source of life, livelihood, and resilience for billions of people. Yet it is under unprecedented pressure from climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, and unsustainable practices. Which is why it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to our session here at COP30 on the question of how to scale up marine nature conservation and climate solutions. Our challenge and our opportunity is clear. We must accelerate action to protect marine ecosystems by leveraging their potential as powerful climate solutions. This means scaling up marine protected areas, restoring blue carbon habitats like mangroves or seagrasses, while at the same time expanding solutions like offshore wind energy. We need to ensure that climate and conservation efforts are inclusive, science-based, and adequately financed. This is why we are conveying leaders, innovators, and practitioners here on stage who are driving transformative change. Together we want to explore pathways on how to turn commitments and conflicting priorities into concrete actions. In the name of the German Federal Environmental Foundation, thank you for joining us today here at the German Climate Pavilion. And now it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Kracht from the Ministry of Ecology climate action, nature conservation and nuclear safety. Thank you for jumping in last second for your minister. We are happy to have you here. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Alexander Bonde. Well, indeed, this is a bit improvised now. Sorry that the minister had to run away at the very last minute. And I'm prepared, well prepared for the panel, but this is a bit last minute improvisation indeed. But it's a privilege to kick off this event. The title in itself is already very promising and very current: Scaling Up Marine Nature Conservation and Climate Solutions. It underlines the close two-way link between marine conservation and combating the climate crisis. The oceans are our most important partners in climate action. There's still not enough awareness of this key connection. It rarely comes up in public discussions. For this reason, I would like to thank Alexander Bonde and the German Federal Environmental Foundation for this side event dedicated to marine conservation. It is crucial that we make the importance of oceans and climate action more visible in the international discourse. We must always remember that the existence of life on this planet depends on oceans as the single largest ecosystem. Oceans provide oxygen. They provide food. They are crucial for regulating the global climate as well as the global water and carbon cycles. They absorb up to 90% of the heat and around 1/3 of the carbon dioxide that we humans produce. So oceans act as a major buffer in the climate crisis. Globally, they are also the basis for many jobs, for example in fisheries or tourism, and they are vital for our energy production. But they are under enormous pressure. The climate crisis, acidification due to too much carbon dioxide, overuse, species loss, plastic litter, and other pollution are causing massive harm to the oceans. These issues are interconnected and have mutually harmful impacts. In Germany's waters, the North and the Baltic Seas, for example, stocks of herring and cod are really under danger now. We must take swift and decisive action. Nevertheless, it is important to me to emphasize that we have made significant progress globally. For the future, we, the German government, want to better integrate climate action and marine protection. And we are promoting this, for example, with a targeted program to maintain and restore seagrass beds, salt marshes, and kelp forests along Germany's coasts. This strengthens biodiversity and marine ecosystems, and at the same time, more carbon dioxide is stored. In the area of offshore wind energy, we have another example of how to combine climate action and nature conservation. We will surely hear more about this during the panel discussion. Expanding wind power, on the one hand, makes an important contribution to fighting climate change. But on the other hand, like other uses of the ocean, it impacts the marine environment. And to buffer the impact and fund long-term marine nature conservation measures, the German government and the German Federal Environmental Foundation have created their own funding instrument, the Marine Nature Conservation Fund. It draws funds from offshore expansion and provides long-term financing for projects. Internationally, we are also making important progress. It's a major achievement that the required 60 countries have now ratified the new BBNJ agreement, the agreement to protect the biodiversity on the high seas, which will therefore enter into force in January 2026. That's a great success. Germany is working very hard and will soon also ratify the agreement because it's our clear aim to be a party at the time of the first BBNJ COP. This agreement is key to reaching global marine conservation goals. and also the 30 by 30 goal of the Global Biodiversity Framework. Germany is one of the key supporters of its effective and swift implementation. With the Living High Seas IKI project under our International Climate Initiative, we are making an active contribution to supporting partner countries of the Global South with drawing up proposals for high seas protected areas under BBNJ, so to facilitate the implementation by all countries that want to participate in the BBNJ, of the BBNJ agreement. I've already mentioned how important nature-based solutions are for the seas. The Mangrove Alliance for Climate is an outstanding example of international cooperation in this area. Germany is a member of the Alliance and also supports the Mangrove Breakthrough. The aim is to protect 15 million hectares of mangrove forests worldwide by 2030. As you all know, mangrove forests are valuable habitats and also natural carbon sinks. We're doing a great deal for nature conservation, climate action, and coastal defense as well by restoring and protecting mangrove forests. This is also an important source of income for local people. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be here today and we'll be happy to join you on the panel later in this event. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much to Dr. Eva Kracht. And with that, of course, we are already ready for our panel. So please join me here on stage. Professor Dr. Katja Matthes, Alexander Bonde, Dr. Eva Kracht, and last but not least, Monique Barretta-Galvao. Join me here on stage. And a round of applause, yes. And I think as we are now fresh still in our faces, shall we take the photo now? Yes? You know it. I mean, we quickly stand up and then we have that already. Everybody else, yeah? Beautiful, because I mean the heat will do its own magic. All right, yes, we heard already a lot about the situation when it comes to our topic on how to scale up marine conservation and climate solutions. But of course, I'd like to dive in with a broad perspective into our conversation. First of all, I'd like to introduce you to our panelists. Next to me is seated Professor Dr. Katja Matthes. Thank you for making time in your calendar for being here with us, the director of the Geomar Helmholtz Center for Ocean Research based in beautiful Kiel. Also professor of atmospheric physics and member of the executive board of the German Marine Research Alliance. Thank you for being here. Then, of course, Alexander Bonde. We know you already. Dr. Eva Kracht. Again, thanks for making time and for stepping in. And last but not least, we also have on the right-hand side Monique Barretta-Galvao. You're the vice president at RARE in Brazil. What RARE is and what keeps you busy? Rare? How do I pronounce it correctly?
Rare.
Rare, wonderful.
Okay. In Brazil it's hardy, but it's fine.
Wonderful.
Okay.
We come to that in a second. Let me just start with Katja Matthes, because we'd like to have a broader perspective and a broader image. What is right now the current state of the oceans, and what does this current state and health of the oceans mean for climate protection and, of course, biodiversity conservation?
Yeah, so I'm glad to be here. So the ocean is not doing well, and it is working for us for the climate crisis. We heard this already. So 90% of the excess heat is stored in the ocean. It's the largest carbon reservoir. But for example, I'd like to give you some numbers. The global average non-polar sea surface temperatures reached record high of 20.87 degrees Celsius in 2024. So this is more than half a degree higher than the average between 1991 and 2020. So this means the number of marine heat waves has doubled since 1982 already. So in intensity, frequency, and duration of marine heat waves, and this will continue to rise. And the heat waves or the warming is not everywhere the same. We had an enormous heat wave in the Mediterranean this summer. We had an average temperature of 26 degrees in June, which is very unusual. So 3 degrees higher than average. And of course, there is not only warming, and maybe one other fact, we have Tiumar has an outpost in Cabo Verde, which is close to the birth of the Atlantic hurricanes that go over to the US coast. This year, on 11th of August, we had then Hurricane Aaron going over Cabo Verde as a tropical storm, and we had a flash flood in our facility, half a meter of mud in the center, and so the Ocean Science Center Mindelo is closed until the end of the year. We not only have warming, but we also have other anthropogenic stressors like overexploitation, eutrophication, pollution. And so this means for climate protection that warmer water has less capacity for taking up CO2. This is a big problem. We have enhanced extreme weather events, and this means for biodiversity that the ecosystem, flora, fauna is under extreme pressure. Some of the species go extinct. We heard it, herring and cod in the Baltic and North Sea are already almost gone. This is a problem. We have hypoxia that create death zones. Over the past 50 years, the ocean has lost 2% of oxygen. This is really significant. The warming also attracts invasive species. Normal species go back. It has dramatic feedback loops. Coral reefs, seaweed disappear. We see that the seagrass in the Baltic Sea we have lost already 60%, and we are looking for more resilient species that can live in warmer waters from the Mediterranean to restore seagrass in the Baltic Sea. For example, in the Mediterranean, 75 of the endemic fish species are in danger, and 14 are currently on track to extinction. So it has enormous consequences, not only for the ocean, but for biodiversity and also for livelihoods, for our livelihoods.
Thank you for that start with the big picture. And of course, now I'd like to hear from you, Monique, with the zoom in and the lens of Brazil. What specific activities, first of all, are you doing with your organization? And what activities are you undertaking in the area of marine protection? And what do you experience and see when we see these global effects and these global pictures?
Thanks for the opportunity today as, outsider Brazilian in a panel of Germans. Great. Our agenda is the 30 by 30 goal, right? If you think that globally, the world has less than 3% protected the coastal zone. Until 2030, we need to run to the 27%, right? Brazil is with 26% already protected. Our goal is to really help the government to achieve the 30 by 30. And we work to enhance local management with the community, or creating new protected areas, or even bringing management plans. Sometimes you have a marine protected area that was decreed 20 years ago, but there is no management plans. Doesn't become action really in the ground with leaders. Doesn't mean, if you decree that is going to have really protection. So engage communities in different levels, from mayors to women to youth to local leaders, to really protect and be the guardians of the coast is what we do. We catalyze and provide capacity building for them regarding really get the protection needed. And for that, we need to invest locally, not global. So local action require political will. Political will plus finance. We have one example about the Blue Action Fund that fund Mozambique, Honduras, was a great example to local funding going to this action, So Brazil is very mature in terms of the framework in protection. We had several exchange with Mozambique, for instance, for calm management, and inspire Mozambique for the calm management, but lack of action in the ground. And the key is really mobilize change through the local leaders.
Hello, yes. Hola. That's interesting because you bring in the specific challenge of the local perspective. Just briefly, how do you do it? How shall we picture your work?
Great. We have several approaches. We have the ecological, more with universities, to really monitoring the biodiversity in mangroves or some key species like crabs or oysters. So we engage universities and the government to do this in practice. Another pathway is really, doesn't make sense the forest of mangrove green with the bank account of the community red, right? So they rely on the biodiversity for their survival. So another vehicle, what we do is to really provide small community entrepreneurships. So one example that we have in Sori at the Marajó Island, if someone has time to go there, is amazing. It's like 3 hours by boat. You're going to see a crab facility. So the community had the idea 7 years ago, said, okay, I get these crabs from the nature, I cannot sell it, how I can add value to promote and improve my life, put my kid in school. So this is one example in practice. But it's not just catch the crab to get in the adult phase take 10 years. 10 years for a crab to get in the adult phase. 7 centimeters, so the community just get the crab that is male, not female, and if it's more than 7 centimeters, right? So it's not just regarding the market piece. We need to unlock behavior change, and we work in the ground for this behavior change with the community, unlocking opportunities for generation income as well.
Thank you. Thank you for zooming in with us into this local perspective, because so often, of course, we debate on a global level, and this helps us to picture actually what we are talking about. But Alexander Bonde is with us, and I'd like to have again the global perspective when we talk about funds. And the German Federal Environmental Foundation's Marine Nature Conservation Fund has been launched, and of course it's also linked to climate and nature conservation, but also to the oceans and to the freshwater bodies that we've just heard of from Monique?
Well, the new, just starting Marine Nature Conservation Fund of the German Federal Environmental Foundation tries to be an answer for our local commitments to the German ocean, so to say, to the North Sea and to the Baltic. Both are small compared to our big oceans, but still have huge problems. We heard about some of them. A big danger in losing biodiversity, a lot of problems with emissions. And we are in a very critical phase for the North Sea and for the Baltics, because if we want to fulfill our climate goals in Germany, we need a huge increase of offshore wind power. That's a key factor to get our climate goals really implemented. And at the same time, we are looking at ecological priorities and the question of how do we get that increase in offshore wind power organized by not increasing the crisis of our seas is a very complicated question. And the fund was set up by we got an endowment by the federal government, 400 million euro, that came out of the fees that the energy enterprises pay for being allowed to set up the offshore windcraft parks. So they had to pay a certain amount for innovative ideas, and what we are trying to do now is increase the work for nature conservation in the North Sea and in the Baltics, taking care of habitats like seagrass, taking care of endangered species, introducing more measures to increase their chances. And at the same time, the fund is there to help innovations that make offshore usage more nature-friendly, to tackle problems like noise during the construction of the wind parks, reduce emissions from the wind parks and the infrastructure, the grids, the sea transport, all the logistics around it, taking measures to introduce more nature conservation around the platforms and increase our ability to fit those two ecological necessities closer together by introducing more measures for nature conservation in the process of increasing the use of offshore windcraft.
Thank you, because this brings us, of course, to the perspective of the offshore wind power, but marine protection, but also, of course, the international treaties, and that's why I'd like to come in back to Dr. Eva Kracht. As we all know, the UN High Seas Treaty will come into force in January 2026, and in that multi-perspective world that we are living in now, what does this mean for marine and climate protection, also for Germany, and of course for the to-dos from a governmental perspective?
Well, let me start by saying I have been saying a lot over these past couple of days that here in Berlin we can actually see and experience the forest and the importance of the forest in a very special way, but the same is true for the sea, of course. And when I was in Brazil for the first time with my former minister, Steffi Lemke, just after the inauguration of your current government, we were in Manaus and then we went to Recife and actually looked at some conservation measures in the area, and we learned about the use of the term the blue Amazon, which we thought was quite striking and explained very well the importance, the extreme importance of the seas. Everybody knows about the importance for the climate of the Amazon region, but the seas are really a huge ecosystem that is a huge ally in climate protection and climate resilience, but also under great threat. And if we do not take care of that blue Amazon, the world climate will be seriously messed up. So the High Seas Treaty is a very important element in this puzzle of protecting this huge resource that we have. It allows for the establishment of protected areas in the high seas, which is also, I used to be an international lawyer, let's put it that way. It's legally also very exciting because the high seas, of course, are kind of managed by humanity. So it's difficult to make progress on anything you want to do there, including the protection. So it gives us the basis for establishing marine protected areas. It also gives us the basis for having environmental impact assessments for all kinds of activities taking place in the high seas. Of course, we've got fisheries, we've got a lot of traffic, but increasingly there is also a real threat of deep sea mining taking place, and that's also something where we need to be really careful about. We don't know very much about the deep seas. And finally, also this gives us a basis for a fair sharing of the marine genetic resources. Of course, it will not be easy. It will be a lot of work, including scientific work, to establish high seas protected areas, and which is why we set up that project under our International Climate Initiative, which I mentioned already. It's called Living High Seas, and is aimed at countries of the Global South that want to be part of this enterprise and want to develop proposals for such high seas protected areas. So I hope this will help to have a good basis to use the best knowledge we can of all the partners around the world, and also develop ownership in so many countries that help us protect the oceans.
Thank you. We heard now, of course, different perspectives on how to protect the marine ecosystem. We heard the local perspective, but also, of course, from policymakers. When it comes also to partnerships from Global South and Global North, that was something that stood out. Professor Dr. Katja Matthes, I'll turn back to you because, of course, we also want to hear the scientific perspective. What are science and nature telling us on marine conservation, and what are, yes, when we talk about priorities, what are the most important starting points, right, to go into successful, sustainable, and a resilient marine conservation? Do you have maybe the magic recipe to fix it all?
Well, I'm not sure we have the magic recipe, but we have some examples, and I'm happy to share 2 examples which I think are key. So first of all, effective marine conservation needs many steps. We can only protect what we know. So, and we don't know much. We talked about the deep sea. So the first steps are always to understand the ecosystem and their stressors. And within the German Marine Allianz, the DIM, we have different solution-oriented research missions where we do exactly this. It's a consortium of 25 marine research institutions in Germany, financed by the federal and the state government, and all the institutions, universities, Helmholtz, Max Planck, Leibniz, and Fraunhofer working together to investigate, for example, ocean-based solutions for carbon dioxide storage. So we investigate, for example, the restoration of coastal ecosystems, seagrass. We look at ocean alkalinity enhancement. We look at marine CCS. And we need to make sure that these are not producing negative side effects to the ecosystem. So there is a lot of research going on to look at the pros and cons. So the second example where Geomar in particular is very much involved is the Futuro campaign. This is a co-design campaign in West Africa. It's a big, large-scale, transdisciplinary, year-round observational campaign where we will go with a new meteor that will be ready by the end of next year, hopefully, into the West African upwelling system. This is one of the most precious biodiverse ecosystem. 200 million Africans depend on the fish that comes from this region, but it's the least observed of these eastern boundary upwelling systems. So there is already an overexploitation of stocks. There is pressure from climate change, from pollution, deoxygenation, and we want to understand this, go there for the first time for an entire year, measure the system, and really come to a sustainable ecosystem, science-based ecosystem management. And we will have a co-design workshop with 7 West African countries at the end of the month in Dakar, in Senegal. So I think this ownership, what you were mentioning earlier, and including local communities is key. And this is what we are trying to include the people that are concerned, that know best the area and the problems. The fishermen do see the fish going away. So this will be towards the end of the UN Ocean Decade, and hopefully we will be able to come to a sustainable ecosystem-based management off the coast of West Africa.
For all these projects, of course, now we're coming to the big topic of funding. Funding is, of course, needed, and support and resources. So with the current developments, as we all know, in different political spheres, but also with the current developments in the US mean for marine research, especially the cuts of public funding, what is the consequence then of these developments for, of course, the scientific perspective and for implementing projects?
It has a big interference with what we are doing. So I just like to give you one example: the Argo floats and their Argo program. These are buoys that measure the ocean. They dive deep into the ocean, 2,000, some of them go to 4,000 meters. They measure temperature, oxygen, salinity, carbon, and then they float through the ocean they go up and deliver their data via satellite. So on this Argo system, 55% is currently financed by the US. If this funding goes away, we will lose a lot of the observations, and this will be a threat for weather forecasts for Europe, because we really depend on the data of the ocean. So this is a big threat. Also, data protection and data storage, this is another thing. And I think this is the time where Germany and Europe can really speak up and become a leader in taking over some of these measurements and also data storage.
I'm looking to Germany and, of course, to Alexander Bonde when it comes to funding. Alexander, I'd like to start with you. Of course, how can the German and federal environmental foundations projects then contribute to these solutions? You mentioned already the fund, but I'm sure you have more projects that are specifically going into these gaps.
Well, our main focus, the North Sea and the Baltics, are a part of the picture, but then they have their very special problems that we are trying to concentrate on with the fund. But basically, we're talking about the same things. We're talking about, for example, ways of involving the fisher families in conservation. We see a very strong decline of coastal fishery in Germany due to the decline of the fish populations, costs and other structural problems. So right now, a lot of people are on the way and trying to find solutions for that. And one way, just made it in the German news in the last days, developing sea ranger ideas involving the natural users of the Baltic and the North Sea into the conservation process, trying to use them for the monitoring, trying to set up new business model that enable to preserve the old knowledge of the fishery and using it for the knowledge we need for protection, for monitoring, and all the other things. And a lot of thoughts go into the question on what can we do to increase the chances of habitats that are important for biodiversity and for the capacity of the sea to store carbon. So how do we increase our knowledge about seagrass? How do we increase the techniques and the technology to actually get those habitats back, to restore the natural sites? And we have a lot of projects coming that are going in that direction. And apart from that, we have very special problems. For example, for migrating fish that are coming from Germany into the ocean and backwards. We are financing or start to finance some interesting projects that are trying to save the salmon and the sea trout in the Weser River system, for example. So very species-oriented projects and projects that are concentrating on questions of technology, techniques, involving the inhabitants of the coast and involving those people who know the sea and love the sea. And we are trying to find new business model that bring those ideas and those people together.
Thank you. Just to wrap it a bit up, because of course, as always, with these highly interesting topics, so as always, we're running out of time, but Monique, now of course, we'd like to come back to you to bring in the local perspective in these times of scarce public funds, you know, when of course a lot of funds are out there, but at the local level it's not always at the right spot. So what would you say as a call to action also, how to integrate best the local perspective, because you have the ear on these people, on these local perspectives in these times we're living in when money and funding is really scarce. So what is something that you would like to share with a big exclamation mark to the audience here at COP30?
I would say you mentioned the Blue Amazon, right? So we are right now in the biggest Amazon coast of mangrove in the world, which is continuously, right? just lose for the Indonesia about area, but all the money goes to the forest. So in our case, the money flows to the forest, not to the coast zone. Nobody knows that, there is an Amazon coast where the Amazon meet the Atlantic Ocean. Sometimes it's super simple, but some people doesn't know. And another thing is we really have local solutions. We have an AI with a university trying to scale, also measuring all the aspects that you mentioned, 2 prototypes, and go to the WhatsApp for the community around tides, salinity, temperature, and this help with them. And sometimes these solutions, they exist, but they are not seen. So I believe that focus the funding and research about these local solutions and trust the community about implementation with low mechanism about compliance, because sometimes you don't have, all the invoices. You need to trust in the community that they're going to deliver the result. All these panels that we are working is not just rare mentioning. We brought 15 members in 100 panels. It's not myself speaking about them. They can speak by themselves. So it's what we do. We leverage community engagement, and we need to have the trust to catalyze the funding for them.
Thank you. And last but not least, to Eva Krach, the question, of course, when we zoom out again to the COP30, bring that into the COP perspective again, what are your expectations, or what do you expect from COP30 in terms of marine conservation, in terms of the blue Amazon, and not just the forest as a priority?
Well, again, Belay is a good place to look at these synergies between nature protection and climate protection, and the provision of livelihoods, for that matter. And the ocean, like I already said, is just one huge element of nature. So the ocean has in previous COPs been given some attention, and I hope that'll continue in this COP. Let's see in what way the presidency will want to capture that. But I think it's very appropriate, would be very appropriate to strengthen in the decisions taken here in Belém and in the actions that we agree on here, to work on this, to make the ocean our ally in climate protection. Maybe, and what does that mean, making the ocean our ally? I think we need to be careful about what we mean by that, because there are some things that we can do, where we can adopt activities and changing ocean ecosystems by restoring them, by restoring seagrass beds, salt marshes, kelp forests. That has been proven to be effective to store carbon, to improve biodiversity, and also provide livelihoods to the local communities. We do see increasing attempts to kind of engineer ocean systems in a large-scale way. Again, I think that is something that we need to be very careful about and adopt a very, very precautionary approach. Because humanity has a long history of getting things wrong and not seeing all the effects of our deeds. So I want to lobby for the nature-based solutions, including on the coastal and the ocean ecosystems.
Yes. Okay, so wrap it up. Monique, I'd like to start with you. What is needed in a short sentence? Otherwise, I'm in big trouble with the team because we have a reception coming up and we need to get rid of all the chairs. But what is needed to ensure that the oceans remain saviors in the long term? What is your call to action in one sentence?
Trust in the community. They are the guardians of the coastal zone.
Alexander Bonde?
Well, I like commitments, but I love the implementation, and I think what we need is real implementation and getting all the plans into action.
Eva Krach, your last statement was already into that direction, but maybe you can give us another sentence. What is needed to keep the oceans as saviors?
Oh, just inspired from the name of our High Seas project, Living Seas.
Wonderful. And last but not least, Katja, Matthes.
I think we need pilot projects and co-design to scale up ocean-based solutions and to give the ocean a voice in global climate action.
Beautiful. Thank you to all of you. Thank you. And thank you for coming to our beautiful side event, as we are all ocean lovers. And thank you for joining us in the live stream. Greetings from Belém, from whatever time zone you are joining us. And with that, I wish you all a wonderful evening. Thank you very much for your attendance.
Global Multidão, realizing just transitions. Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP30 in Billey.